My name is Linda Carver. I'm 55 and I live in Florida. For most of my life, I thought I understood loss. I lost my parents too young. I learned how to keep going with a cracked heart because there was no other choice. But there's a different kind of pain that doesn't feel like grief at all. It's the kind of pain you feel when you realize the person you've protected your whole life can look you straight in the eye, voice shaking, tears streaming, and lie so convincingly that everyone believes them. And you become the villain just for asking a question. It started close to 11 at night. My phone rang and rang and rang, like it was trying to climb out of my purse by itself. When I finally answered, I didn't even get a full hello out before I heard my sister Melissa sobbing like someone was squeezing the air out of her lungs. "Linda, please, I'm begging you, I don't know who else to call." I sat bolt upright in bed. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "Melly, where are you? What's happening?" She hiccuped, gasping between words. My baby, Noah. The doctor said he can't wait. They said he can't." The room went strange and quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. Noah, my nephew. A little boy I'd only ever seen in a handful of pictures Melissa had sent, blonde hair, a goofy grin, hugging a stuffed bear. I remember thinking, when I saw those photos, that the universe had finally given Melissa something pure. "Cancer," she choked out, and then she cried harder. They need a deposit to transfer him, to start treatment. "Linda, I swear on my life, I'm not asking for me. I'm asking because it's my child." Have you ever been yanked out of sleep by a plea like that? The kind that flips a switch inside you before your brain has time to argue. The kind that makes you say yes while you're still trying to understand what you're agreeing to. "How much?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. "How much do you need?" She swallowed, and then it was like she'd been handed the number by someone standing beside her. 18,000, she whispered. $18,000. They said within a few hours, or they won't process the transfer. $18,000. For some people, that's a number. For me, a retired elementary school teacher living carefully, counting every grocery receipt, that was nearly everything I had put away for my future. But in that moment, I didn't think about my future. I thought about a child in a hospital bed and my sister breaking apart on the phone. "I'll figure it out," I said. I had no idea how, but I said it anyway. Melissa sobbed, and her voice turned small, like a child. "You're the only one, Linda. I know I'm a mess. I know I've made your life hard, but Noah didn't do anything wrong." And that's the part that hooked into me like a barb, because Melissa and I aren't close in age. I'm 12 years older. When our parents died, I wasn't just her sister anymore. I became her guardian, her backup parent, the person who signed school forms and paid for doctor visits and stayed up at night when she had nightmares. I remembered her at 11 years old, clutching my sleeve outside the hospital, eyes wide and terrified, not understanding why the adults were crying. So when she called me that night and said please, something old inside me answered automatically. "Send me the hospital information," I told her. "Send it right now." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a picture of a document, hospital logo, pediatric oncology, a doctor's name, then another photo, a pale little boy wearing a knit cap, an IV in his hand, then a photo of a wristband with Noah M on it. I stared at that image until my eyes blurred. What kind of monster questions a sick child's photo? So I didn't question it. I threw on a sweater and drove to an ATM in the middle of the night. I made transfers, I pulled cash, I called my bank for higher limits. I moved like I was underwater, half awake, half terrified, all adrenaline. I even sold something I swore I'd never sell, a small gold bracelet that used to belong to my mother, the only piece of her I had left. I'd kept it for over 20 years because when I held it, I could almost feel her hand in mine again. I cried at the jewelry counter. Not because I wanted the bracelet more than I wanted to save a child, God no. I cried because I couldn't believe life was asking me to pay for love with the last thing I had that felt like home. By noon, I had wired the full $18,000. Melissa sent me a long message. "You saved my baby. I owe you my life." I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for weeks. 2 days later, she called again. "Linda, they said there are more costs, meds, tests. I'm scared." This time it was $7,500. I sat down so fast my knees actually buckled. It felt like the floor moved under me. "Melly," I said slowly, "I need to speak to the hospital. I need to confirm this. I can't keep sending money without verification." She cried harder instantly, like crying was the emergency button she'd learned always worked on me. "You don't believe me," she sobbed. "You think I'd use my child to scam you? Oh my God, Linda, I'm about to lose my son and you're questioning me." My stomach twisted. It's a special kind of cruelty when someone uses your own decency against you, when your instinct to be careful gets painted as heartless. Then she sent more proof, another photo, another wristband, another document. I sent the money, then more, then more. Over 3 weeks, I gave Melissa almost $35,000. At first, I didn't tell the rest of the family. I was embarrassed. I didn't want them to call Melissa irresponsible or accuse her of being dramatic, and I didn't want them pressuring her when she was falling apart. But Melissa didn't keep it private. The next Sunday, I walked into church and felt it immediately, the shift in people's eyes. After service, a woman from the ladies' group grabbed my hand. "Linda," she whispered, "I heard about little Noah. I'm praying for you." I froze. Then my phone started lighting up with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in months. "Linda, I heard what's happening. Help Melissa." "You're the older sister. Don't abandon her." "A child is dying, Linda. Don't be selfish." Selfish. That word burned. I had already drained my savings. I had already sold my mother's bracelet. I had already borrowed money from a friend. But nobody knew that. They only knew Melissa's story. Her baby was sick, she was crying, and I, Linda, the older sister who had it together, needed to step up. That night I called Melissa. "Why did you tell everyone?" I asked. She hesitated. "I only told Aunt Diane. For prayers. I didn't mean for it to spread." Then her tone shifted, subtle but sharp. "But honestly, Linda, they're not wrong. I only have you." There it was again, that hook in my ribs. I took a breath. From now on, I need full documentation. I need the hospital address, the case number, the department phone line, the doctor's name, real information. And Melissa, my little sister, the girl I raised, snapped. "You're cursing my child," she shouted. "That's what you're doing. If you ask for those things, you're basically wishing he dies." My mouth went dry. "Melly, I'm not wishing anything," I said, shaking. "I'm trying to be responsible." She screamed, "You're selfish." And then she hung up. I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at the empty spot in my jewelry box where my mother's bracelet had been. I told myself Melissa was terrified. Grief makes people ugly sometimes. Stress makes people irrational. I told myself I should keep believing, and that belief is what almost destroyed me. By the 4th week, Melissa texted me. "Noah is getting weaker. The doctor says there's a new drug. Insurance won't cover it. $12,000. I stared at the message until my eyes hurt. I didn't have $12,000. I didn't even have $200 without scraping. I typed back, "I need to see you. I need to see Noah." Her response came fast. "You can't. ICU doesn't allow visitors. If he sees you, he'll get agitated." I swallowed hard. I'd worked around hospitals. I'd known families with sick children. Restrictions happen, yes, but no one can ever see him felt wrong. I called her. She answered breathless like she was moving around. "What? Are you at the hospital right now?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Put a nurse on the phone." Silence. Then the crying started again, immediate and loud. "Don't do this to me. Don't make it harder." "Melissa," I said, and my voice cracked. "I'm not sending another dollar until I speak to the hospital." And that's when the crying stopped too quickly, like a faucet turning off. Her voice went flat. "You've changed," she said coldly. "You're not my sister anymore." I sat there, staring at the wall, feeling like I'd just been slapped. Right then, a message popped up in the family group chat. "Aunt Diane again. Linda, what are you doing? Melissa cried all night. How can you act like this when your nephew is dying?" My hands shook over the screen. I typed back, "I've already given so much. I need verification." My cousin replied immediately, "If you help, help all the way. Don't let a baby die because you're stubborn." I felt something inside me start to harden, not against Melissa yet, but against the way everyone was willing to attack me without knowing anything. That night, I opened my laptop and did something I hated doing. I went back through every photo Melissa had sent. I zoomed in on the hospital wristband. I studied the background of the IV photo. And then I saw it. A tiny watermark in the corner. Faint. Easy to miss. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in further. It looked like the kind of mark you see on stock photos or images taken from the internet. I told myself no. Maybe Melissa had borrowed a photo to illustrate something. Maybe she was too overwhelmed to take pictures. Maybe someone had stolen her child's photos. But the knot in my gut wouldn't loosen. So I did a reverse image search. I'm not tech savvy. I'm just stubborn when something doesn't add up. I used the basic tools anyone can use, and the results hit me like a fist. The photo of Noah with the IV. It came up in a fundraising post from the year before, in a completely different state, a different family, a different child. My hands went numb. I did it again with the photo of the smiling toddler hugging the bear. That one came up too, on a cute toddler photo site. I sat there, motionless, staring at my screen as if it were a window into hell. Still, I tried to cling to one last possibility. Maybe Melissa's photos had been stolen and reposted. So I did the one thing that would confirm reality. I called the hospital number on the document she'd sent. A receptionist answered. "I need to confirm a patient record," I said. "I'm a family member and I'm helping financially." She asked for the child's name and date of birth. I read what I had. Noah Miller, and the date from the wristband photo. There was a pause as she typed. "I'm sorry," she said. "We don't have a patient by that name and birth date." My vision narrowed. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. Pediatric oncology, Dr. Harrison. "Do you have a case number?" "No, I'm sorry," she repeated, voice still polite, still steady. "But with the information you've provided, we have no record." I felt like my body stopped working. I tried one more time, voice rising despite myself. "Please, I've already sent money. My sister says he's in ICU." Her tone stayed calm, but it turned colder. "Mom, if you believe you've been defrauded, you need to contact your bank and law enforcement. We do not have that patient." I hung up and stared at my hands like they belonged to someone else. Then I called Melissa. No answer. I texted, "Melissa, the hospital says there's no Noah. Where are you?" Nothing. I called Aunt Diane. She answered, already angry. "Linda, what are you doing to her?" she snapped. "Diane," I said hoarsely. "I called the hospital. They say there's no patient, there's no record." She scoffed. "Hospitals don't give information to outsiders. Stop making things up." "I'm the one sending the money," I shouted. "Money can be figured out later," she shot back. "A child is dying." And in that moment, I understood something brutally clear. If you don't bring hard evidence, tears will win. And Melissa, my sister, had turned her tears into a weapon. That morning, I called my friend Carol and told her everything. When I finished, Carol was quiet for a long moment. Then she said gently, "Linda, you need to report this right now." My throat tightened. "But she's my sister." "Exactly," Carol said. "And if you don't stop this, you'll lose everything, and you'll go down with her." I called my bank's fraud department. They asked for transaction dates, amounts, recipient info. I gave them everything. The agent said, "You transferred the money to Melissa Carver's personal account?" "Yes," I whispered. "And did she instruct you to write anything specific in the memo line?" I remembered Melissa telling me to write medical urgent so it gets approved faster. "Yes," I admitted. The agent paused. "We can open an investigation, but because these were voluntary transfers, recovery is unlikely unless we can prove deception and you file a formal report." Unlikely? I felt sick. I had willingly handed over money because I believed a child was dying. That's when I decided, if this was going to be resolved, it couldn't be emotional. It had to be legal. I drove to Melissa's apartment that afternoon. She lived in an older complex near Tampa, hallways damp, televisions blaring behind thin doors. I knocked hard. No answer. I knocked again. "Melissa, open the door. I know you're in there." Finally, the door swung open, but it wasn't Melissa standing there. It was a man. Tall, tattoos on his wrist, eyes that looked at me like I was something he could use. I recognized him immediately from Melissa's stories. Troy, her new boyfriend, the guy who did online business and knew investing. He leaned on the doorframe. "Who are you?" "I'm Melissa's sister," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I need to see her." "She's resting," he said with a lazy smile. "Not taking visitors." I looked past him. Melissa was on the couch, hair messy, eyes red. There were no toys, no child's shoes, no child-sized anything, no sign, none, of a sick little boy living there. I took a step forward and Troy blocked me. "You don't walk into someone else's home," he said. I stared at Melissa. "Where's Noah?" And Melissa did it again, like flipping a switch. She burst into tears. "Why are you here?" she wailed. "To humiliate me. My baby is—" "Stop," I said, and my voice shook with rage and grief. "Stop saying that. I called the hospital. There's no Noah. The pictures you sent are from the internet." Melissa went white. Troy shot her a quick glance, sharp, warning. Melissa stammered, "You're lying. You hate me. You've always hated me." I pulled out my phone and opened the search results. "Look." Troy snatched my phone out of my hand and tossed it onto the couch. "This old lady's bored," he sneered. "Looking for drama?" Something in me snapped, not into violence, but into clarity. "I sent $35,000, I said slowly. "If this is fraud, I'm going to the police." Melissa shrieked, "Do it! Call them! You want me dead too!" Troy chuckled, smug as sin. "Go ahead, you sent it willingly. You can't do anything." The way he said that, like he'd said it before, like he'd lived by it, made my blood run cold. I looked at Melissa one last time. "Melly," I said, voice breaking, "I raised you. I sold Mum's bracelet to save your child. If there's one honest part left in you, tell me the truth right now." Melissa cried, but she didn't answer the one question that mattered. She didn't say where Noah was, because there was no Noah. I walked out, and I did something I never wanted to do in my life. I filed a police report on my own sister, because at that point, it wasn't family drama, it was a crime. 2 days later, a detective called me, Detective Ramirez. Her voice was calm, not judgmental. She asked me for everything: transaction records, messages, the fake hospital document, the photos, the phone number listed for the doctor. "Have you ever met the child?" she asked. "No," I whispered, "only pictures." There was a pause. "Then we treat this as a potential fraud case," she said, "and it's likely the documents are forged." I felt the shame hit again, hot and heavy, like I'd been tricked in front of the whole world. But shame doesn't return money, and it doesn't protect you from what comes next. That week, my family demanded a meeting at Aunt Diane's house. When I walked in, the air was thick with accusation. Melissa was there, sitting in the center of the living room, wrapped in a blanket like she might faint. Troy sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder like he was claiming ownership. Aunt Diane looked at me like I was a stranger. "Linda, you went too far," she hissed. "You called the police. You want your sister in jail?" "There is no baby," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "There is no Noah." The room erupted. Melissa cried, "How can you say that? Noah, Noah!" Troy cut in smoothly, oily. "Linda's jealous. She's hated Melissa since she was a kid." I gave a bitter laugh. "I hated her so much I raised her." My cousin slammed his hand on the table. "If you're accusing her of fraud, where's your proof?" I pulled out everything I had. The hospital's email stating they had no record matching that name and birth date. The reverse image search results. The text messages where Melissa instructed me to write "medical urgent" and send money to a personal account, not to any hospital. Melissa sobbed louder, trying to drown me out. But the real twist, the moment reality finally cut through the noise, didn't come from me. It came from the front door. Detective Ramirez stepped inside with another officer. She held up her badge. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I need to speak with Melissa Carver and Troy Jenkins." The room went silent so fast it felt like someone unplugged it. Aunt Diane's mouth fell open. Who are you?" "We're investigating a pattern of fraudulent fundraising related to sick children," Ramirez said evenly. "Ms. Carver's sister provided evidence." Melissa stood up, panicked. "This is family." "Family or not," Ramirez said. "If there is criminal behavior, we investigate." Troy smirked, trying to act tough. "You got a warrant?" Ramirez pulled out paperwork. "We have authorization to collect devices connected to this investigation, and we have grounds to question both of you." She turned to Melissa and asked one direct question. "Where is Noah?" Melissa's lips parted. He's at which hospital?" Ramirez pressed. "What room? What doctor? What case number?" Melissa had nothing. Troy tried to interject, but Ramirez turned to him. "Mr. Jenkins, you also received funds via digital transfer, correct?" His face tightened. Ramirez continued calmly, like she'd done this 1,000 times. "We verified the hospital has no patient record. We traced the doctor's number on that document, prepaid phone, registered under a false name." Melissa collapsed back onto the couch, trembling. Her crying changed. It wasn't the loud, convincing performance anymore. It was messy, real, fearful. And then she looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in weeks. And she said small and broken, like a child caught stealing, I was only going to borrow it and pay it back." I felt something inside me split open. "Borrow it," I repeated. "By inventing a child with cancer?" Melissa sobbed. "I didn't think it would go this far. Troy said we just needed to get through this. We'd be okay." I looked at Troy. The smugness was gone. His eyes were flat. Detective Ramirez's voice stayed professional. "Melissa, you just admitted there is no child. You understand the consequences of that?" Melissa covered her face. Aunt Diane started crying. "Oh my God, Melissa!" My family's certainty crumbled in real time. The same people who had called me selfish and cold now looked like they couldn't breathe. But me? I couldn't cry. All I could see was my mother's bracelet, the sleepless nights, the way Melissa had learned from childhood that if she cried hard enough, someone would rescue her. Only this time, the rescue had been built on a lie. Ramirez and the other officer escorted Melissa and Troy out to continue the process. Before Ramirez left, she looked at me and said quietly, "You did the right thing. If you hadn't stopped it, they would have kept going, and not only with you." That's when I learned I wasn't the only target. Ramirez later told me that Troy had a list. Names of older adults living alone, people active in church groups, people known for helping. Melissa was used as the family face because a crying sister with a sick baby opens wallets faster than any stranger ever could. The photos were stolen from the internet. The hospital form was a template, edited and printed. The transfer, new drug, insurance denied scripts were written in advance. Melissa just had to cry and read. And the nastiest part? They weaponized my family against me. By making me look heartless, they increased the pressure. They turned morality into a trap. There's no pretty ending when family lies to family. Melissa was charged with fraud and involvement in deceptive fundraising. Troy was arrested. He had a prior record and, according to Ramirez, a warrant in another state. This case simply pulled a curtain back on what he'd been doing for a long time. I recovered some money because the bank managed to freeze a few transactions in time. But most of the early transfers, gone. The bracelet, gone. The sense of safety I used to feel when Melissa cried, gone. Aunt Diane apologized to me one afternoon, voice tired and shaken. "I let the tears blind me," she whispered. I nodded. I didn't scream. I didn't gloat. I was too exhausted for that. But I also didn't pretend it didn't matter. Melissa wrote me a letter from detention. It was filled with, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, I was weak." I read it once, then I set it down. Do I love my sister? In some crooked, complicated way, yes. She's the girl I raised after our parents died. I will always carry that. But love does not mean access. Love does not mean letting someone bleed you out because they know which part of you still feels responsible. I did something that once would have felt cold to me. I consulted a lawyer. I filed paperwork for a repayment order through the court. And I set boundaries so clear they couldn't be argued with. No contact, no financial requests, no pressure through relatives. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. I went back to church, not to make a speech, not to shame anyone, but to say one simple thing. If someone asks you for money because of a sick child, verify first. Compassion is beautiful, but it needs truth beside it. Later that night, I opened my jewelry box. The spot where my mother's bracelet used to be was still empty. I placed a small folded note in that empty space, something I wrote for myself. Not every rescue is righteous. Righteous is rescuing the right way. People ask me if I'll ever forgive Melissa. Here is my honest answer. I don't want to carry hatred to the end of my life. I can release the poison of it for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean opening the door again and handing someone the same knife. Melissa is my sister. And Melissa is also the person who looked at me and lied through tears about a child who never existed. Both things are true, and if anything good came out of this, anything at all, it's that my pain didn't stay silent. A few people in our community started a small group to help verify fundraisers and protect older adults from scams. I joined them, not because I wanted to become suspicious and hard, but because I wanted my kindness to grow a backbone. I still think about Noah sometimes, a child who never lived, invented to steal the softest parts of people. And I think about the truth, how slowly it moves, how much it asks of the person carrying it, how it gets shouted over by performance. But I also know this, the truth has a way of coming home. And when it does, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like standing up after a long fall, shaking, bruised, still hurting, but on your feet. I stood up, slowly, but I stood up. And this time, I wasn't standing up to save someone else. I was standing up to save myself.